remember very well when the Dreamcast died. Very painful process for me. I got ribbed by a number of my friends. Very painful. I did not. I love my Dreamcast. I love my Dreamcast, but I had to admit that it was gone at some point, and I had to kind of give in to what was then considered the dark side. That side being the PS2, and that was, I believe, the. I guess. Wow. Do I have this? I guess my 10th machine. Is that my 9th? 10th? Anyway, after the Dreamcast, after I absorbed the shock and awe of the Dreamcast's death, though it's still alive, I will say that real quick. I bought the last game that was officially released back in 2006, so it didn't 2007. So it's not officially dead, but let's be honest, it's dead. Anyway, I gave in with Virtua Fighter 4. Virtua Fighter 4 was the game that convinced me to go PS2. Now, Virtua Fighter is a series that, of course, hails from the arcades that I didn't really understand. We Americans are not too into Virtua Fighter 4. We're not too into technical fighters. But I did know that the Japanese were all over it, and I'm intrigued by games that have a very devout following, but are really hard to get into. So I devoted on the Saturn. I had Virtua Fighter 2, and I devoted about 3 hours to learning Shun-Di. Now, I didn't learn all of Shun-Di's moves in that time. He's the drunken master, the old man, the champ. The dude is wacky. He's just totally unpredictable, totally worth it. If you devote 3 hours to any one character in that game, you will fall in love. It is a fantastic game. And I was so hooked on the Saturn version that I had to get a PS2. And the PS2, culturally speaking, it was not even that long ago. But when it was released, it was met with a bunch of hype by the greater media. Not just gaming outlets, not just games journalists. But I remember reading an article in Time that was saying, is the PS2 too dangerous to actually release in Japan? Not because of Japan, but just because it was too powerful a console. There were rumors that it could create warheads and nukes, and its computer processing power was basically going to melt down the world. And there was a lot of this talk. I remember seeing lines for people, lines of people waiting to purchase the PS2 in Japan upon its release, and on the BBC, and it was a big. The PS2 was the coming of a new age in video games, because the PS1 was hugely successful, and this was coming with DVD playback. Remember, DVDs were new back then. This is how the PS2 got into a lot of homes. In fact, for about the first 6 months after the PS2's release in Japan, I remember reading a statistic that said that for every console. For every one game that was purchased for the PlayStation 2, there were 4 DVDs sold in the country. And that was kind of telling. The PS2's initial library of games was pretty weak. It had a very weak lineup. The strongest lineup to date, I would say, for launch, would be the Dreamcast. I'm telling you, man, I'm crazy about this machine, but look back. Look back at the Dreamcast launch. Check out the games. I'll tell you my 5. I'll tell you the 5 games I bought at launch. And I was waiting tables. Well, no, I should have bought the machine. It was $200, so I felt justified. $200 at launch. I realize I'm talking about the PS2, and I'm getting involved with the Dreamcast, but that's just the nature of my game. I will say, Dreamcast, $200 launch. I got with it Power Stone, Trick Style, NFL 2K, Soul Calibur, and Ready to Rumble. Those 5 games justified everything. Everything from there, and I knew it at the time, that is worth $200, that pack. Everything from there, just gold and butter. Awesome! Anyway, the PS2 had a pretty weak launch, and I had no interest in it. Plus, I was kind of pissed off at it, frankly. And pissed off at gamers at the time. When the Dreamcast died, I saw it as the end of real video games and real video gamers. Because the PlayStation 1, as you might recall, kind of gave birth to what we considered the casual gamer. Now that we have casual gaming as a very real force with PC desktop games and browser games, looking back, it actually created the casual hardcore gamer. That is to say, the person who played games casually but bought Madden every time so they could play it with their friends in Tiger Wood. That's when sports really had their rebirth. on the PlayStation because it gave way to the casual hardcore gamer. But the PS2, I did pick up, and culturally, man, and within the games community, the gaming community, man, I remember hearing about the Emotion Engine and pictures of rubber duckies and girls crying, but totally CG, and it was supposed to bring in the dawn of a new age, and then the launch lineup pretty much fell flat. Red Faction was decent. I have it. It's okay. It's not bad. Pretty bad. I mean, the load time is pretty heinous. Time Splitters was a huge, if you'll recall, Time Splitters was actually a PS2 exclusive, the first one was. And that was good too. But for the most part, it was reason for me to gloat about my Dreamcast because the holiday season that was launched, the Dreamcast lineup was redonkulously good. Jet Grind Radio, Quake 3, Shenmue, there was another really heavy hitter. I forgot exactly what it was, but I mean, during that period, Dreamcast actually had probably its strongest lineup ever. So, you know, with the PS2 people, but of course, they shot back with, yeah, well, how many DVDs have you seen on your machine? You know what? If I were a gamer, I'd play video games. If I were a movie watcher, which I am, I'd get a movie playing machine, which I have. Just saying. Though I will admit, my first DVD was purchased for the PS2, and it was Clerks. I did get that. Not the biggest Kevin Smith fan now, but I am a huge fan of that movie.